Welcome to the What's Up Doc podcast. I'm Jeff Booth, my co-host Calissa Pollard. Hey, Calissa.
Hey, how's it going, Jeff?
Doing good. And we have a great guest today, Wes, who has worked on the brokerage side, so he knows that world that we've been in. He's started his own brokerage. He's worked in direct to consumer food, which has got to be like one of the hardest logistics space available. We're thrilled to have him on the show. Wes, great to meet you.
Yeah, hello to both you, Jeff, and Calissa. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. And, let's just jump in. How did you get started in the brokerage world? We know you worked at Coyote. How did you get there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So actually, a couple of my friends, one being a childhood friend, one from college, they were a year ahead of me coming out of school. They moved to Chicago, had both gotten recruited out of Indiana by Coyote, had joined. My first job out of college actually was working for Pearson Publishing, and was short-lived, only was with the company for about 8 months before they outsourced our entire department and laid us all off. And so I was without a job, and I had these two friends of mine who said, hey, I think there might be a good opportunity and fit for you here within the transportation brokerage logistics space, which I knew zero about. But the company was fast scaling at that time. They were trying to fill quite a few headcount. Interviewed, got offered a job, and that really started my career in logistics about 13, almost 14 years ago.
Nice. Well, you're in good company of us just jumping into the logistics space too, without necessarily planning it. What was your first role there? Were you account sales, carrier sales, track and trace, compliance? What'd you get into?
Yeah, so my first role there was working in carrier sales. So I was doing dry box carrier sales, and the way that Coyote at the time, and maybe still today, had the network kind of modeled and set up was that they had it broken out by states that product would inbound to. So any freight that was coming inbound into the states of Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, or Arkansas really fell into the team that I was assigned to. But then there very quickly, within just a few months of joining the organization, we decided that we were going to stand up a vertical specifically focused on refrigerated freight, built out a whole sales team to go kind of attack that. And then really more so out of a need more than anything, I was promoted into a manager role. Again, that same territory I just mentioned, but now I have a team underneath me who I lead that we're just focused on that temperature controlled product into those states. So really that was the beginning of my career in cold chain perishable goods.
Nice. What makes refrigerated so different or so challenging, right? We obviously know that, the basic, right? We need to keep this thing at a certain temperature the entire time. What does that look like when you're at a brokerage? Is it harder to find capacity? Is there different compliance things? Like what is booking refrigerated freight like?
Yeah, so I would say that the challenge in the beginning was just finding capacity, right? We at the time had carriers within our network that we were already working with who had refrigerated trucks. Because we had never solely focused on that, we really wasn't an attribute that we were tracking in like a profile as we're building out a relationship with these carriers, right? So we know where you're domiciled, we know how many trucks you have. I just don't know which of those is a refrigerated truck or a dry box. So it was really the exploration of who do we have currently today in our network that we partner with on a daily basis that has this capacity to be able to support our demand. And then from there, being able to bridge the gap of, okay, we also have additional need, really going out and sourcing that. I would say was the initial challenge for us as we got started.
Calissa, do these problems sound familiar in terms of attributing and like identifying profiles and things that we deal with?
Yeah, definitely. It's hard to capture all that data if you didn't know that you needed it at the very beginning.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's what we experienced. We made a doc scheduling product, and the goal was low friction. And then now we're starting to think like, oh, if we knew more things about these people, we could help them in different ways. We can make the product work for them. But kind of your same challenge, like we know their name, we know their email, but we're like, are you a broker? Are you full truckload? Are you LTL? How do you like to schedule? What do you, and now we're kind of working backwards of like, well, how do we get this data from you so we can help you better?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sorry, Melissa. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, even knowing which company they actually work for is kind of a headache.
Yeah.
There's so many different parties that are booking for so many different people. It's like, okay, who are you really with?
Yeah. And honestly, like exactly what you said was the point that I was going to mention is in the beginning, we were so dependent on resources like the DAT and sourcing carriers. I think that we could all agree that sometimes the quality of carriers that you find on the DAT versus an organic relationship build, right, don't necessarily meet the tier or quality that you would hope that they do for your customers' sanity, right? So it was definitely challenging in the beginning. We found ourselves frequently working with carriers that were less than transparent with us and trying to battle through that to just make sure that we are meeting the customer standards, that we are delivering that freight on time, that it is safe while in transit and outside of the control of our customers. Those were definitely all challenges that we had to find solutions for as we built out that network.
Yeah, that is crazy, especially being one of the first ones through the wall, so to speak, of like, okay, these are problems we didn't know we had. So now that we know them, we have to go solve them. So that's interesting. So you left Coyote and you went and built a brokerage. What made you want to go and build your own brokerage? And then was that brokerage also refrigerated focused, or did you focus on other things?
Yeah, so actually between my time at Rego and Coyote, I did have a stop in between there at HelloFresh as well. But yeah, jumping to my time at Rego, it was an opportunity where I kind of got tapped on the shoulder. What I found at the time I'd moved, I was living in New York City. And what I quickly realized when I moved to New York City that I guess I didn't really have a concept of before that is New York City, large transportation hub, primarily focused on international freight. Domestic transportation is not something that is as readily, I guess there aren't as many companies focused in that space as you would find in Chicago, right? So I got a tap on the shoulder from a recruiter who said, hey, we have this investor. They are based in Tel Aviv, Israel. They know that transportation logistics in the US is this $9 billion space, and they really just have a goal of trying to get to 1% of that. And they want to build out a team to be able to support this. We don't know anything about logistics. We don't know anything about transportation. And we really think that you could help us devise a business plan to help us really integrate ourselves into that space and as well help build out a team to support like the growth of this company. So that was in the beginning how I really jumped in. And so I would say that when I started, there was a team of 3. It was a CEO, and then there were 2 investors, and one of those, again, was based in Tel Aviv. And then there was no one else. It was, hey, we want you to come on. We want you to help us design a product. We want you to help us build out a customer base. We want you to help us hire a headcount that can go tackle, acquiring freight and executing on freight. So it was really, when I joined, we were at, step 0 in building out a business.
That's crazy. Especially in the brokerage space, because we know how competitive it is. So what was your first step there when you were there? Did you immediately say, all right, I know a couple people we can go hire, or was it like, hey, we need this TMS in place first? What was like your first big move and your imprint on the company?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was really this identification of, I think that we can do multiple things in tandem, right? Like, I think that we can hire a small group of people that can start trying to go out and attack freight and source freight. And I'm comfortable and capable of saying that even if we don't have a system, that we, with the right resources, give me a DAT login and give me access to Excel or Google Sheets. From there, right, like that's the basis from which we can just start to build the business. So we really went out, we hired a team. I believe initially we brought in it was three sales reps and one additional operator in addition to myself, all came over, and then we started with trying to evaluate TMSs was step one. So we must have gone through a dozen, off the shelf or cloud based TMS providers. Ended up landing on one, and really what our reasoning for that is we were capable of negotiating with them to say, hey, we in our contract know that we want your TMS to power the business that we're doing and help us move our freight, but we also want access to your back end code to be able to develop and build off of that. And we don't want you to think that that is your technology and you can just take it. We would consider possibly selling it to you, but just know that like we are going to build something proprietary from here. So once we had that agreement in place, phase two was now, what is the technology that we want to focus on? How do we want to differentiate ourselves in the market? And really, what is the cornerstone or the North Star that we're going to sell our customers on? That is the value add.
That's crazy. Calissa, have we ever had anyone approach us in that sense around? I know we're very API focused, but has anyone asked us about things like that?
I'm not sure I understand your question, but I feel like they ask us API questions all the time. But
right, but I don't think we've ever had anyone like as clear of, hey, we're going to build some things on top of this,
and it's contractual.
And yeah, right. Like we're going to build more on this and make it better, and that's not necessarily yours. Have you ever encountered that with any of our customers?
I have maybe a couple today. If I had to guess, I don't know if I want to name names, but maybe a couple that have built more like functionality on top of what we have. And so the basis is our product, but then they build on top of it. Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. We had a lot of the majority of the conversations we had, we were told no, like we would never even consider this option.
Really?
Yeah. There were, if I remember correctly, 3 providers who were willing to have the conversation, quickly X'd one out because they wouldn't agree. They would say like, no, whatever you build, we actually have ownership or a percentage of ownership in that technology, right? We did not see eye to eye on that, moved them out of the conversation. And then really we narrowed it down to 2 providers. And I forget at the end of the day what ended up being the differentiator and making us choose one over the other. But that candidly, that conversation was more so on the contractual side at that time, handled by our CEO, where I was more focused on building out the operations.
Yeah, so it's not really a white labeling kind of situation, or is that exactly what it is?
Yeah, I would say that it was white labeling. Our customers had no idea that we had even a relationship with the TMS provider. They had no idea, like, from their perspective, it was all proprietary. It would have all been ours.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think we have a situation like that necessarily.
Yeah, one of our benefits is people know our brand, so it helps with just some traction and things like that. But on that side of it, though, we're super open-minded. So yeah, we probably would have fallen more into the camp that you're looking for. Hey, look, we're trying to build this tool that makes 20,000 people happy. We understand that you might have very specific needs. Here's our API. Like, build what you need to make this the best for you. And I think we like customers like that. So it's interesting to me, and not surprising though that many TMS providers might have been a little standoffish on what you've done there.
Yeah, absolutely.
We always joke that our side hustle could be, while we work here, is building add-ons to the same tool we build for our customers. Or like, we could just build apps on top of this as our side hustle too. So
I think everywhere that I've worked, I've identified a problem and said, I can make this a side hustle to create a solution for this specific problem. I don't think there's been one stop in my career where that conversation hasn't come up.
For sure. So my big question would be, so you exited the brokerage. What do you miss, or is there anything you miss about the brokerage space?
Yeah. I would say that there definitely are a couple things that I miss, right? I would say that I would consider myself a pretty personable person. I really liked when I was in that space the opportunity to be consultative across a spectrum of unique issues, unique problems, right? To hear how is a different industry dealing with like a similar problem, just they're approaching it from two different aspects, right? But nonetheless, an issue exists and we need a solution, right? So I definitely miss the opportunity of having multiple or unique issues to address. Not to say that there's a lack of complexity or issues that we need to tackle and solve for today in working for someone who manufactures our own product. But that being said, you just got a much more eclectic array of issues and problems and that was the part that I always really enjoyed.
I can get that. Yeah, I was this is kind of interesting, and this probably isn't a great look for me, but I was the director of carrier sales at Global Trans. So I had I don't know, like 100-person carrier sales team, and like I'm a fairly analytical guy, like, and I care and I put in the effort and I worked really hard to learn it, but I also have never booked a truck. So then you're like, how, like, I'm sure they were like, how could we respect our director of carrier? This guy's never even booked a truck. But I would sit on calls all the time. I would be there. Certainly when we'd have loads taken hostage and stolen, like I'd get on the phone and, try my best to help and put myself out there. But it was kind of crazy that I was, leading a carrier sales team. And I'm sure they're like, why is this guy here? Like he can't even go source a truck right now.
And those that I've moved between a few companies, and with each one of those moves I've stepped up in my career, right? And I would say I'm sure at some point that what you were feeling is similar to how maybe my direct reports felt, or it's not unique to either of us, right? Like but smart people are hired to solve for complex issues, and that doesn't necessarily always mean that you're going to have direct or exact experience in those issues that you're trying to solve for. And I really feel like that has always been, and I'm sure Jeff, same situation for you, the example you just used, but that's always been something that I think pretty quickly I've been able to navigate around, and the people whom I'm responsible for leading, I would like to think at least, saw the value that I added, as I came in and really helped create solutions, right? Being my approach has always been solution oriented. We can have all the problems in the world. Complaining about it or griping about it isn't going to make a difference. How do we move past it, right? And so I think that approach has always benefited me in my career.
For sure. And me and Calissa experienced this at Opendock, right? We build warehousing software, and we haven't personally operated warehouses. And so, Calissa is seen as a go-to expert from so many of our customers asking like how to get their warehouse set up, but she never ran a warehouse, but now she's just seen this and heard this so much and built the software to help them, that I feel like she comes across with, more expertise, and maybe not expertise in like, wrapping cartons or inventory placement, but surely into like how to organize and think about your warehouse inbound and outbound. So Calissa, kind of like, what's that like for you? Is it similar? Like, I know I always felt like a fraud. I knew I was working hard to find a solution, but I was always like, oh my gosh, like I'm trying here, guys, but I don't have the experience.
I think you get more confident the more use cases you see across the board. So then you're just like, oh, okay, well, I have all of these ideas of what other clients have done. I don't know if that will actually solve your problem necessarily for your specific use case, but here's how I've seen it solved in the past. And that tends to be very helpful for people. But you're absolutely right. Like, I personally believe that even if you are a manager or whatever, like you should be kind of on the front lines experiencing what your employees are experiencing every day, so that they can feel kind of the pain that they're going through and be able to solution off of that with them and kind of support them through how do we solution this correctly. And so, yeah, you're totally right. It's like we have been to a few warehouses and we've done a few tours and we see how they use the product. And that's always so fun and cool to see, because it's like, this is really how they're using it.
Calissa, I've got a company I used to work for. I'm sure that would love to talk to you about some dock solutions. I had some phone calls with a couple of my past employees over the last week where, still just reaching out to me more so just to vent than anything, but it's definitely warehousing related issues and the lack of accountability in those partnerships and the issues that they're creating for the business, and really just looking for, I think, you still leveraging me as a thought partner and like what's the best way to approach this, like how can we move past some of this problem. But at the end of the day, I'm not there. I don't have time to sit here with you
right.
and really dig in, but I'll give you 15 minutes, of my thought. But I'm sure they would love to speak with you.
Oh, I would love to talk with anyone. Yeah, just chat through it, and learn more. Like I'm mostly just curious, and as much as I can consult, I'm also trying to learn and understand all of that. So that would be great. Bring on anyone who wants to chat.
Yeah, and Close has become like an encyclopedia of all these use cases. So yeah, even though it's crazy, it's like, oh, you've never ran a warehouse, but now that you've talked to 1,000 people who do, all of a sudden you really do have this incredible knowledge base that the same person who's running the same warehouse for 20 years doesn't get that luxury of seeing 1,000 use cases in 2 years. It's like a quick hack, a quick shortcut to all of a sudden get a really good feel of the industry. And I know me and Close both experience it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm curious now. I want to hear more about whether it's at HelloFresh or Daily Harvest. I feel like, very different companies, but very similar challenges in direct to consumer food. What don't people know? I think at this point, everyone has probably at least gotten one order from a Blue Apron, a HelloFresh, a Daily Harvest. So like they know what that customer experience is like, but what goes into getting that there? Because I always feel like it's so much harder than people would ever give it credit for.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I would say that you hit the nail on the head, and that people don't necessarily understand the complexity or the added complexity of delivering a perishable item or product to your door in the time frame in which you expect it to deliver versus a non-perishable or ambient product, that's just coming from a warehouse out of an Amazon DC. The challenge there being that there really isn't the infrastructure to support perishable direct to consumer, right? And so if you think about it, the same corrugate that like your non-perishable item comes in is the same corrugate provider that we're partnering with, trying to look at different insulation, right? And what is the right insulation, and what is the degradation of temperature quality, like in that shipment over time, and how quickly does that temperature actually hold with, I don't know, like call it, sheep's wool insulation versus some other form of it, recycled insulation. Like these are all the challenges that we try to solve for. And then as well, the commodities that are in those parcels, right? And do they require, does one commodity require being held at a different temperature than another commodity? And like, how are you thinking about shipping those commodities together in the same box and ensuring that by reducing the temperature on the overall box that you're not somehow compromising one of the other ingredients, right? So definitely some of the challenges that we face just from a packaging perspective. And then beyond that, if your parcel is going to be one day delayed, right, from Amazon, you can call Amazon and you could say, my parcel didn't show up on time. Please issue me a $5 credit, and your package shows up the next day. No harm, no foul. Well, if I deliver my product to you the following day, that could be the difference of, hey, there are microorganisms now growing on this food, and it is no longer safe for your consumption. That can happen literally in a matter of hours. Makes all the difference there.
That's absolutely crazy. And to think about, I didn't even consider the multiple temperatures. So right, so even as you guys think about your pick and pack, you start thinking, what is the minimum temperature needed for these guys, or what's the temperature the chicken needs to be at? But by putting this whole box down to 30 degrees, do we destroy any other products? In which case we need to package differently. Like, so all of a sudden now all your products have to have like this temperature range of what's acceptable, and you're thinking about how to keep that box at that temperature.
Yeah, and one of the challenges that we've had like in my current role today, we've had some interesting conversations with some companies that are really just in the very beginning stages of their evolution. But one of the issues that we deal with consistently as well is from the time that package delivered, our partner did what they were supposed to do. They delivered that package on time, in full, as expected. But that package delivered in the middle of August in, let's call it Miami. It's 95 degrees with, an extremely high humidity rate. That package delivered at 9 o'clock in the morning, and that consumer is not going to be home until 5 p.m. at night. You have a south-facing doorstep, and let's just say the majority of the day that package is sitting there baking in the sun, right? Like, what is the impact of all of those conditions on the degradation of like the ice and the temperature within that package as well? And so, like these are all some of the challenges and complexities that we try to solve for. It's a matter of prioritizing what are those that we think are in our control today that we can have an impact on. And as we move through some of those, are some of the findings and some of our learnings going to help us solve for these things that we really still don't have an idea of how to solve for, but know that it's on the roadmap and we need to figure out a solution at some point in the future.
I was literally just thinking about that because me and Calissa are based in Phoenix. And I was thinking, you could do your job perfectly and I could screw it up, right? Like you did everything you said you were going to, you delivered perfectly. And yeah, Phoenix in July, like if that window's an hour off, like that thing can cook out front immediately. And on your side, you're probably thinking, and you with your brand and the quality that you're putting out, you can't just throw your hands up and be like, not our fault. We got it to you when we said. You have to deal with, me as a very difficult consumer.
Yeah, and it becomes challenging, right? And so we partner in both my time at HelloFresh and my time at Daily Harvest. We have customer exchange or care teams that, are very diligent in the questions that they ask to consumers as they're reaching out and saying, hey, there's an issue with my product. But the consumer understanding and knowledge of what actually quantifies as a damage to your product. Is your product damaged because it was melted? Or was the damage caused by our parcel partner? Was that a package that we actually implemented zone skipping on? And so instead of that just moving through the typical hub and spoke model of getting from origin to destination, right? We put it on a truck, it was palletized, and before it ever actually got into a sort center or was injected into a final mile parcel hub, was there some damage caused by a forklift getting it there, right? And so all of these things as we're dealing with consumers and us being able, as the manufacturer and my team specifically, like within logistics, we partner significantly with our data team, our data science machine learning team, to really try to understand and dig into what are the things that we can, quantitatively land at today that we know to be true. What are the things that we don't, because all of this is customer reported and the customer education of our specific product doesn't exist, right? And so we're trying to solve again for all of those issues and doing the best that we can, but there are definitely gaps that we need to be able to bridge for ourselves and being able to make some assumptions around the data that we have available to us today to be better and to create a better customer experience.
Yeah, that's a good challenge. Calissa, have you ever ordered any cold storage or food product?
I do it all the time. I bought, milk or something, and we're in Phoenix, and my front door is west facing, and it's even in the winter, and just left out for 2 hours, and the milk's completely spoiled. Obviously, ice cream and other things like that, but completely ruins it. So
I lived in Yuma for a very short period of time.
Yeah, you felt it.
yeah, I definitely understand. It'd be 110 during the day and drop down to 70 at night. and that 70 feels a lot cooler than your typical 70 when it's been 110 all day.
Right. Yeah. It's that desert cold. I try to explain that. It's like, yeah, 70 is great, except when it's like a 50-degree fluctuation, it feels crazy. And then
Yeah.
Yuma, literally probably the only place in Arizona that's like the only place in the US that's potentially has a higher temperature than Phoenix from time to time is like Yuma or, Lake Havasu, somewhere along that border
Yeah.
there.
Yeah,
So yeah,
absolutely.
you've gone through it.
The Sonora Desert is a whole different beast. I love dry heat. I love going to Scottsdale, and sitting by a pool, but in my time in Arizona is going to be limited to Scottsdale probably.
Yeah, that's probably a good choice. The other thing I always think about with food too is you have more of a challenge than just safety and expiration. Obviously, that's number one, right? We got to keep people safe when we're eating. But like, I feel like you also have the next harder challenge, which is quality, right? Because so many goods can be safe, but it doesn't mean they're still good, right? Like you see expiration dates and it's really best buy dates on things like chips, and it doesn't mean they go bad. It's just they probably aren't as good anymore. And with you in such a competitive space of food in general, but direct to consumer food, like how do you guys think about like best buy and quality even more than safety?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we Daily Harvest today, we have a food safety and quality assurance team, and so when they're thinking of our products from sourcing, right? And so does this product meet the standard in which we expect that what is essentially what is literally a raw material for us, right? Are these bananas ripe enough? Is the level of sweetness in that banana, does that meet the standard of quality that we want, because it has an impact on the overall flavor profile of the smoothie in which it's going in, right? So definitely think about it from that perspective. We are consistently and constantly testing product and working with our co-manufacturers to ensure that the product that they have sourced on our behalf and at our direction to meet the PO we cut to them meets that standard, right? From there, it's definitely the integrity of the product once that raw material is transformed into a finished good, and then getting that finished good from our co-manufacturer to a storage facility, from a storage facility to distribute out to one of our fulfillment centers, from one of those fulfillment centers all the way to the consumer's door, right? Did we maintain proper temperature integrity to ensure that that product is actually safe for consumption? So I actually just ran into not a unique situation, but I ran into a situation last week with a load that transferred in from one of my storage warehouses in Chicago inbound to one of my fulfillment centers in New Jersey. And we do what is called pulping product when it gets there. So we will take a single unit from a single case off of a pallet in the nose, middle, and tail of each reefer, and we will test the temperature of it to ensure that it's at or below the temperature, the minimum required temperature that we need for quality assurance and food safety. And so if it's not, then we'll receive the product, we'll put it into quarantine, and then we'll do, again, some of that testing. My food safety and quality assurance will take samples and they'll test to make sure that there are no microorganisms or anything of that nature. It's still safe for consumption. Simultaneously, my team worked with our transportation partner to say, hey, we need to get the reefer data for the time in transit. And all of our shipments, with the exception of our ice cream, ice cream is a collection that Daily Harvest has today. Those loads need to maintain at -20, but across all of our other categories, our product is safe to maintain at -10. We saw in the data from the time that this driver arrived at my facility in Chicago, he kept the reefer running at +10 until the day of delivery. And then the morning of delivery around 6 a.m., dropped the temperature on the reefer down to -10 degrees. And so when he goes in and he delivers and we pulp the product, one of the checks that we have in place in the process that my team and I built is, hey, warehouse, go outside, look at the reefer, take a picture. I want to see the set point on that. And so, of course, set point set to -10. The driver did what he was supposed to. I don't understand, right? And then it's actually until we get into that data, we see. Now, luckily, my team was able to, we did the testing. My quality team did all the testing. All of the product was still met our standard. It was safe for consumption. We were fine because it was such a short time in transit. But we were able to still use all that product. But nonetheless, now I have to go back to my broker. I have to have this conversation. I have to say, hey, that carrier is no longer allowed to haul any of our product, right? This could have potentially been $150,000 claim. And now I have to put the onus back on you to say, what are you doing to ensure compliance with the partners that you're hiring on my behalf moving forward?
Right. Welcome to the DNU, the do not use list. Yeah, no, but that's exactly it. And I always think about quality assurance, especially with like best buy dates. I just imagine some poor guy in the back that like, all right, John, it's day 8 of the chili. Try it again. He has a bite. And he's like, it's decent. All right, day 14 of the chili, John. He's like, I don't know, guys. And like this poor guy just has to eat all the food each day later until you figure out that it still tastes good.
Yeah, no, the thing for us that we're most concerned about with our product being frozen specifically, right? Fresh product, much different. So a company like HelloFresh, that product, you can't use that product. You can't use chicken after a certain time, right? Like just don't consume it. Our products being fresh fruits and vegetables, the fact that it's all vegetarian or fruit-based product, we don't necessarily, that's a little bit less of a concern for us as the integrity of the product. So at a certain point, we start to see freeze begin to occur. And then from there, freeze actually does have an impact around, there are some safety concerns around freeze, but for us, I think it's more so, does this product meet the quality when we open it and our customer engages with that product? Does that product look the way that we want it to look, right? And like those are, for us, that's probably more so the space that we're playing in with our product being frozen.
That's awesome. I had a question for you on just how do you find the best vendors to work with? Because it seems like you guys put so much effort and care into your product, and then you put it in the hands of your vendors to actually deliver it correctly. And, I kind of feel this pain too, where like we're building such a great product and we're doing everything we can in our power to make it great. And then sometimes we put it in the hands of some clients who do random things with it. And you're like, that's not how it's supposed to work. But yeah. How do you find these vendors that actually care about the product quality and safety as much as you?
It's a great question, and I would say that my counterparts in supply chain do a phenomenal job upstream from us in the vetting process, right? And so we go and we say, does this potential vendor from whom we want to source, drop in whatever commodity you want, fruit or vegetable, right? Are they meeting the standards that we set forth, right? And I'm talking about pesticides. I'm talking about like their practices, how, like what actually as well. Some of the considerations that we take into part here are social as well, right? Like, is this a company that we want to align ourselves with because they believe in the standard of quality and the product that they are selling aligns with our brand, right? And so our sourcing team does a really long vetting process. They do a phenomenal job identifying those partners all the way at the source. From there, when we're talking about moving into the manufacturing and production side, of the business, we have a team as well that is focused on the manufacturing side, identifying who are the right partners, who's capable of making the products at the standard and quality that we want. And then from there, once that identification's been made, we have an entire commercialization team whose whole job is going in and making sure that they are capable of actually manufacturing that product again to the standard and quality that we expect, right? Taste, texture, color, all of those things is that the way that we want our product to look, taste, to, again, thinking about the customer's initial interaction with the product, is this going to meet those standards? And so all of that vetting takes place prior to my team ever even getting involved. Beyond that, I would say that I've been very blessed in my time here at Daily Harvest in that we have really good partners on the logistics side. Our warehousing and distribution partners are very well known. They have a very high standard of quality. They care for our product the way that we would expect our product to be cared for. And then the same, not even just within my storage and distribution, but within my fulfillment. I only have right now today, our current fulfillment network is 5 different facilities, 5 nodes, but it's serviced by 2 different partners. And so we have the luxury of really being able to dig in and be strategic with these partners, right? We don't, our bandwidth isn't limited in that we're spreading ourselves so thin that we have to have the same conversation time and time and time again with various partners. So, and really, like, for me and my team, thinking about it both in the warehousing space and in the transportation and logistics space, right? It's, are you a partner who, one, is reputable, 2, that, just from a qualitative perspective, right? We get a vibe from you, and we get like the sense that you genuinely do care. And then thereafter, again, going back to that, the data and the metrics, we very much across all of those teams that I just listed, we very much live with our data daily and make sure that the performance and the quality of all of the products are meeting the standards and expectations that we have. And if they're not, we're strategic in the sense that how can we help you do your job better, right? Like, we don't just hire you, and we don't just have a one-sided partnership where you are our vendor, we pay you, and you figure it out. When there's an issue, I want to root cause it. Is it something that I'm doing on my side, on my end, that is causing inefficiency for you to be able to do your job? And if it's not, let's move further downstream. Where is the inefficiency occurring, or why is the inefficiency occurring? And we're really like a partner, like a true partner to, I would say, to all of our vendors, and really wanting to make sure that we can help them to the best of our ability, meet the expectations laid forth when we first entered into the relationship.
That's like a masterclass on vendor management and partnership there. I know we hope that our partners that we find have a similar mindset. So, Wes, we've talked for about 40 minutes now. We've got to hear about working at a big brokerage, one of the biggest ones, starting your own and launching a brokerage when you walked in, you're the only guy in the building, more or less. The hardest, what I think might be the hardest space of direct to consumer food, along that and medical, are just the 2 toughest places to be. So I think this was awesome. It gave us such good insight. I was curious, though, before we wrap up, if you either had a hot take on the supply chain industry, or maybe something you think is like the next big thing in supply chain, something that needs to get addressed. Curious if you had any feelings on that to close us out on.
Yeah, no, I like, for me specifically, I'm focused on cold chain, right? And so no necessarily hot takes, just like calling out the fact that there is a lot of opportunity to iterate in this space and continue to improve in this space, right? I heard Jeff Silver once say on a podcast that appointment scheduling was the last frontier in like logistics and supply chain. And I understood exactly what he was saying when he said that, but really, like, being this much in the cold chain space on a day to day, the opportunity from multiple aspects, people to come in and to really, quote unquote, disrupt this industry, but really create solutions for some of the problems that we address today. And honestly, if we had a follow-up, I could tell you all the problems that exist that someone could solve for. I really think that there's a ton of space and opportunity in there. And then, I'll just leave with this and saying that we've all seen what is happening and taking place across all industries right now as a result of the macroeconomic conditions of the country, with layoffs. And it's, I am just, maybe it's where I started in the brokerage space, but it's so encouraging to see it's so encouraging to see people within supply chain show up every single day, continue to show up, continue to not be discouraged, and just, continue to try to grind it out and work to create these solutions, knowing that this isn't going to last forever and we have to be prepared for when we turn the corner again. And it really is encouraging to me to see my coworkers, spread across logistics and supply chain, but the people that I interact with and those that I don't even interact with, those that I just see and follow their journey through social media like LinkedIn or, listening to various podcasts, listen to them talk about it. It really is encouraging for me. So, just shout out to like everybody in this space, staying optimistic and continuing to work hard, even in these challenging times.
That's awesome. Yeah. Cold chain, no hot takes in the cold chain, only cold takes. And then we're hoping to break Jeff Silver's final frontier though, and solve it with Opendock. So we're on that same journey too. Calista, anything before we close out?
No, I love that, Wesley. Thank you so much for the encouragement. I totally agree with you and feel it. So that's awesome.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Jeff, Calista, thank you so much for having me on today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Wes, and we'll have to get you back on soon to talk in more detail. We appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.